Hey everyone, Wadek here, this time with Game 2 of a Best of 5 series from the Lake Charles Scion Esports Thanksgiving Open. And this time on Frost, we've got spawning in the bottom right as the Red Terran. Representing IVD Gaming, it's Apocalypse. And Apocalypse's opponent, who is currently up 1-0 in this series, spawning in the top left as the Blue Terran, representing Complexity Gaming, we've got QXC. And now game 2, like I said, will be played on Frost, and Frost is a 4-player map, so there probably won't be any double barracks proxy rushes going on, as you do need to find out where your opponent is actually spawned before you can do any hijinks like that. I'll be very, very interested to see if there will be any sort of 14cc on the low ground tactics, but no, it looks like both players are going for Refinery first. Now, in the previous game, Apocalypse was very aggressive, but it didn't work out for him, and eventually just the Hellions from QXC were able to roast a lot of his Marines. He lost a lot of SCVs as well, and he wasn't able to recover. He was down by 60 or 70 supply for a large portion of the game, and he just kept trying to do something, but it just couldn't work out. Now, in that previous game, Apocalypse opened up with a 2 barracks play, trying to go for a double Reaper attack, but it didn't work out as it was scouted out quite early. And once again, I don't know why Apocalypse is opting to not put the barracks here to block it off, because I mentioned, QXC is doing the same thing here, but I mentioned in the previous game that Apocalypse did not put, or he did, but then he did not finish off the block off. He put the barracks here, but then he didn't finish the block off, and the SCV was able to come in and able to detect the second barracks. So it'll be interesting to see if the inability to block this off is going to be able to give QXC some scouting, some much vital scouting information away. But both players have basically the exact same build. They're both going for double factories, or both going for that single factory. So we might be seeing Hellions, I believe. Well, there is a tech lab coming out for the barracks for QXC, so that doesn't indicate Hellions. Very interesting choice. There are no add-ons for this barracks yet for Apocalypse, so there is no tell as of yet. We have the Tech Lab and the Starport, so it will be a Banshee play coming from Apocalypse. I suspect the same from QXC. Yes, that is exactly what is going on. We do have the Starport going down for that Tech Lab. So both players opting for that Banshee harass. And when it's Banshee on Banshee harass, it's just basically who can kill more SCVs is going to come out on top in this matchup. Now the wall off is complete for Apocalypse. It's not yet for QXC. He's got to put down another structure here. But it won't be particularly land-based. Now here on Frost, because they have spawned in cross-spawn locations, both of these Xel'Naga towers can be quite crucial. Because the route to your opponent's base, especially with air units, is directly diagonal. So having control of the Xel'Naga tower will let you know exactly what's happening. And even having control of this Xel'Naga tower will let you know a little bit about what's going on. So it looks like we are going to have Banshees and Cloaking Technology on the way for both players. Banshee on Banshee harass. I think in the next few moments it's going to be very difficult for me to keep control on all the action. Simply because there will be double harassment, and I only have one viewpoint. So once the Banshees are on both bases, I'll only be able to pay attention to one. And this will be interesting. Now, following up the Banshee play is the Raven from QXC, so he's fully expecting the Banshee harass coming from Apocalypse's side of the map. There is no additional Banshee. Instead, Apocalypse is going to use those resources to build a command center and then Raven. So very, very close in build order. And it looks like it'll just be a single Banshee harass for both players. That's one expensive Banshee if you include that cloaking technology. That's not cheap. Now, QXC's Banshee is going to arrive at Apocalypse's base a few moments earlier. Actually, about half a minute earlier than Apocalypse's Banshee. Now, that Banshee is looking for something to kill. It is going to cloak. And the scan does go down. One Marine is destroyed by that Banshee. The Banshee is going to have to retreat, though, until that scan goes away. At the same time, Apocalypse has his Banshee to the left of QXC's main, and he's going to start cloaking and starting to do some damage. This QXC Banshee is just focusing down on supply depots. I don't think that's very effective, but it looks like this Banshee from Apocalypse will be easily detected by this Raven, so you don't have to spend any minerals, potential minerals from mules to detect it. Instead, just use that Raven. Now, a lot of Marines are going down, but in conjunction with this Viking, this Banshee is going to have to try and get out of here. Now, the Banshee is faster than the Raven, but is it going to survive? No, Apocalypse's Banshee has been destroyed. So that's very unfortunate for Apocalypse. Now, it looks like in regards to QXC's Banshee, that Banshee is no longer existing either. So both Banshees are down. So it's very interesting Banshee harass from both players. They opted to go for the Banshee, get the cloaking technology, and then just get one Banshee and then call it quits. And that's a large investment to spend all those resources on the Banshee and then the cloaking technology. And it wasn't really worth it either. I mean, you take a look at the amount of SCVs killed on either side. It's only 2 apiece. So not exactly worthwhile. Now it looks like both players are going to be floating their orbital command to land at that base at the same time. So very, very similar up to this point. Not a large deviation from either camp. We are getting more Banshees out of Apocalypse. And that is interesting because generally, once the Banshee harass doesn't go well, you generally stop building Banshees because Banshees in a head-to-head confrontation with anti-air units or Vikings, for example, or Marines, whatever it may be, are not very good. And that second Banshee is going to be scanned, and so QXC does know there is another Banshee on the field. Able to get a few pot shots on these Hellions, so that's not a bad deal for this Banshee. Unfortunately, no kills on this Banshee. Able to get one Hellion into the red. This Banshee is going to be floating around. Now, we do have Inferno Pre-Igniter on the way for QXC. So it looks like a very similar play like the previous game where he got the Blue Flame, was able to roast a lot of SCVs and Marines. But he did get it sort of late, so it's not really an early Blue Flame upgrade. Now it looks like this Marine is going to try and get away, but the Banshee is faster, and it will go down. So this Banshee was able to pick off a couple, one SCV and a Marine, so you can't discount that. But the Hellions are still alive, moseying around on the south edge of the map. But it looks like Apocalypse is ready to attack, and we only have a few Vikings here in the front. They're going to take some damage. The first Viking goes down. At the same time, we have Hellions harassing this natural base, but unfortunately, they are going to go down. We do have a Cloak Banshee firing on that supply depot, but it looks like we are going to have a confrontation here. A lot of SCVs are rushing in here to provide a meat shield against those Marines. Siege tanks are going down for both players, but now it looks like we only have 2 siege tanks and 1 Marine for Apocalypse, and those siege tanks cannot hit units up that close. But Apocalypse able to land those 3 Vikings and able to clean up a lot of those SCVs. Supplies have really swiftly turned in favor of Apocalypse, and now these 3 Vikings are doing a lot of damage to these SCVs. Generally not very good at ground firing, but I mean, if you're fighting against SCVs, everything looks good against SCVs. And now this is a really big problem for QXC, because Apocalypse does have 3 Vikings in the air. So once the Viking pops out of that starport, if Apocalypse wants to stay aggressive, it's very difficult for QXC to build up a Viking amount. But it looks like Apocalypse is going to be fleeing for the time being, but you have to remember, these Hellions are very fast. Now one of the Hellions will go down soon. No, not yet. The tank hasn't turned around. It's taking a lot of damage, actually. And finally, one of the Hellions does get destroyed, but so does the tank. And Apocalypse is going to try and repair, I believe. This Banshee will get finally taken down, as it looks like the counterattack is in full swing. Now, I don't know about this from QXC, because QXC doesn't have a very large army. Just a counterattack at the natural may be very, very dangerous. And I felt like in the previous game, both players overextended themselves at certain periods of the game. QXC came out on top anyways, but you don't want to overextend here, especially when you're down by so much supply. And it looks like these very damaged Vikings will get repaired up, and that's the very nice thing about being Terran. You can repair those mechanical units quite easily. Biological units as well with medevacs. But just the speed at which they get repaired is so very fast, especially when you pull so many SCVs to do it. So it's like getting brand new Vikings. Now it looks like Apocalypse is going to start mining from his third base, but we do have a pack of Hellions here to the south of Apocalypse base, and Apocalypse, I don't think he knows about this. Is it possible for another run by? There is no complete wall off here. So it may depend on the timing. Now, we are getting stim and combat shields coming out of Apocalypse. We don't have that for QXC. In fact, it looks like he's going for more mech. He's really doubling down on these Hellions. He's getting more and more Hellions, and 2 more factories being completed right now. So he's really committed to these Hellions. Now, these 6 Hellions might have some problems here. One does go down. A lot of Marines are destroyed from that fire attack. Unfortunately, 2 Hellions are destroyed for QXC, so I think Apocalypse came out ahead slightly in that encounter. Once stim finishes, I really don't think Hellions are generally that effective because they fire very slowly. But they can still take down SCVs. This little mine will go down. It wasn't bro for some reason. The SCVs are trying to retreat from this third base. Hellions are giving chase. They are in a very good line, and QXC able to destroy a few SCVs. And it looks like these 4 Hellions are going to be able to get out of there, able to kill a few more SCVs. And delay that mining time, but you have to remember that QXC doesn't have a third base up and running yet. It is floating slowly over, so QXC is slightly behind. Now it looks like these Hellions are going to bide their time and try to run in again. The Marines are in perfect position to ambush the Hellions. Hellions are still able to focus down and kill 2 more SCVs, but it looks like only with 1 Hellion left, this Hellion will not survive. So very unfortunate for those Hellions. And now Apocalypse is in the middle of the map, very close to QXC's base. Scan does go down. We see a couple Thors and 4 Vikings, and these Vikings need to get out of there for Apocalypse. And once they land, I don't know why they did that. The Seeker missiles do go down. All the tanks have been destroyed. The Marines are stimming forward. That Thor stands no chance against so many Marines and Marauders that are stimmed. And it looks like this third base is under a heavy barrage of fire and artillery support. And now this orbital command is under a focus fire from these stim Marines. And QXC is going to tap out. And he's going to GG. So, very, very aggressive by Apocalypse. Just forcing his way. I think QXC sort of had, you know, this idea of harassment. And it worked out a little bit. If we take a look at the end, I mean, well, not that well. So Apocalypse was just being very aggressive and able to find his opening and able to even up the series now 1-1. We'll have to head over to the next game to see who can grab the series lead.